Evelyn found herself in her dimly lit bedroom, the soft glow of her bedside lamp casting elongated shadows against the walls. Unease settled in the pit of her stomach as she observed those shadows that danced and shifted independently, almost alive. Initially, she dismissed it as mere imagination, but with each passing night, the sensation intensified. The air felt heavy, thick with an unseen presence that clung to her thoughts. Trembling hands, Evelyn reached for her phone to share this burden with someone, even if they didn't believe her. Her best friend Milo had always been there for her, though he often rolled his eyes at what he deemed fanciful fears. He would likely brush off her concerns again. Later that day, while strolling through their neighborhood under a twilight sky, Evelyn spotted Milo leaning casually against a lamppost. He approached him hesitantly and revealed what was tormenting her: the peculiar movements at the edges of her vision and an unsettling feeling of being watched. Expected, Milo shrugged it off with a laugh, insisting that shadows were simply tricks of light and dark. Just then, they crossed paths with Mrs. Abernathy, their elderly neighbor renowned for weaving urban legends into everyday conversations. Her sharp gaze pierced through the air around them, as if sensing something amiss in Evelyn's demeanor. With a knowing frown forming on her lips, Mrs. Abernathy leaned closer and spoke softly about beings lurking in darkness, the dark folks who thrived on human fear. Evelyn's heart raced at the mention of these shadowy entities. She hung on to Mrs. Abernathy's every word as both frightful and fascinating images filled her mind. A notion of unseen watchers stirred something deep within Evelyn, a connection to these mysterious forces dwelling within shadows. Milo shifted uncomfortably beside Evelyn, as Mrs. Abernathy continued sharing cryptic warnings about how these beings could manipulate lives without anyone realizing it until too late. Though skeptical by nature, he noticed how captivated Evelyn was by this folklore. They walked away from Mrs. Abernathy's home beneath a blanket of stars. Evelyn glanced at Milo. His expression bore traces of disbelief, mingled with concern for his friend's mental state, yet also curiosity about whispers from beyond understanding. Night returned with its eerie hush, enveloping Evelyn once more as she lay awake beneath tangled sheets. Shadows curled around familiar shapes in her room. They whispered secrets. Only she could hear their persistent calls intertwining with racing thoughts about what lurked just out of sight. Mid-breaths laden with uncertainty and excitement alike. Exhaustion finally claimed hold over Evelyn's weary mind. Sleep embraced her amidst dreams spiraling deeper into realms where shadows danced freely among haunting echoes, an invitation laced with dread, yet alluring enough to draw out curiosity once more. Thus began their journey toward uncovering truths, long hidden within layers upon layers, where light met dark, and where lines blurred between reality and whispered legends longing to be unraveled. Days passed since that fateful encounter with Mrs. Abernathy. Settling dreams plagued Evelyn's night's dreams, where dark tendrils pulled at her consciousness while whispers echoed all around her like haunting lullabies beckoning from unknown depths. Milo decided to join Evelyn on an investigation into local legends surrounding the dark folks during a late-night visit to their town library, tucked away in shadows cast by flickering lights overhead. They uncovered tales revealing how these beings thrived on fear and fed off negative emotions harbored within humans. Tension rose between them as Milo became increasingly dismissive, while Evelyn grew more anxious about the unfolding mystery surrounding them, the weight of malevolence thickening like fog wrapping around their minds. It turned catastrophic when Evelyn encountered the Watcher lurking in a dark corner of her room. It manifested as an overwhelming presence filled with dread that left no escape from its chilling grasp on reality itself. That moment cloaked by darkness came clarity. The dark folks were drawn particularly to those harboring strong emotions, specifically fear, and therein lay their insatiable hunger, feeding off every ounce of anxiety emanating from within. Desperation clawing at hope's edge, now frayed thin by doubtfulness, echoing louder than ever before amidst chaos swirling inside both friends' hearts, struggling against invisible restraints, tightening around them like vines seeking suffocation. They sought solace together, battling against despair threatening to consume everything whole around them. Despite mutual uncertainties, lingering heavily still ahead, looming ominously ever closer behind closed doors, never fully enough away from prying eyes, forever gazing outward, searching inward, reaching ever deeper under skin ingrained, deeply etching marks only known unto themselves alone. United against shared fears, instead, marked by division born. A mistrust sown forth earlier, because acceptance made vulnerability possible. They confronted the Watcher together. Powerful light emanated from their bond, dispelling much darkness surrounding them, but leaving behind lingering shadows. Hinting evermore at future encounters, awaiting patiently, cloaked always beyond comprehension, waiting unseen, still watching, as days turned into weeks. Unsettling events deepened in Evelyn's life. The shadows in her home no longer just flickered at the corners of her vision. They began to take on a more tangible form in her dreams. Night after night, she drifted into a realm where darkness whispered secrets and beckoned her closer. An unseen force pulled her into its depths, and each time she awoke, a chill clung to her skin. Evelyn sought comfort in Milo, but his skepticism only amplified her growing anxiety. He often joked about her vivid imagination, suggesting that perhaps she needed more sleep or less caffeine. With each mocking remark, Evelyn felt increasingly isolated in her fears, like a lone candle flickering against a looming storm. Particularly restless night, she confided in him again at their usual spot, a small coffee shop open late. A warm glow of lights contrasted sharply with the shadows lurking outside. Over steaming mugs filled with warmth, Evelyn shared the details of her latest dream, suffocating darkness wrapping around her like tendrils reaching for control. Milo sipped his coffee thoughtfully, but remained unconvinced by Evelyn's experiences. To him, it all seemed too fantastical. He wanted evidence before believing tales woven from fear and folklore. Determined to prove there was something real behind these stories, Evelyn suggested they investigate local legends surrounding the dark folks. Although hesitant, Milo ultimately agreed after recognizing how deeply this mystery affected his friend. Their search led them to an old library nestled at the edge of town, forgotten yet brimming with dusty volumes whispering tales of past horrors. They pored over books filled with eerie illustrations and accounts of shadowy beings lurking just out of sight. Chilling stories emerged about entities thriving on human fear and anguish. The air grew thick with tension as Milo flipped through pages warning how shadows manipulated events, leading humans down dark paths fueled by dread. Scoffed at some interpretations as mere superstition, Evelyn felt an undeniable connection stir within. It felt personal now. Hours passed unnoticed amidst faded ink and flickering lights overhead, until an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Their perspectives diverged sharply, while Evelyn sensed an imminent threat beyond comprehension. Milo's dismissal intensified undercurrents of frustration between friends who once laughed freely together. Their investigation ended without resolution. Dusk crept upon them, as shadows lengthened across shelves like fingers reaching out for warmth. With tired eyes reflecting unspoken worry and unease, they made their way home separately, Evelyn clutching onto hope while Milo wrestled with disbelief. Those quiet moments alone beneath tightly wrapped blankets later that evening, the stillness gave way once more to whispers echoing through every shadow cast upon walls dimly lit by streetlights outside. Each breath grew heavier. Something unseen loomed nearby, yet remained hidden from view. Evelyn closed her eyes tightly against encroaching fears, but stayed alert for any sign or sound beyond the sleeping walls surrounding her room, a reflection born not solely from imagination, but rather rooted deeply inside herself now. Intertwined among mysteries awaiting discovery ahead, Evelyn and Milo stood side by side. The air thick with tension as remnants of the Watcher's presence lingered in the corners of the room. Shadows curled around them, whispering secrets that pricked at their minds like needles. Evelyn felt a shiver race down her spine. She had confronted fear itself, yet it had not diminished. Instead, it loomed larger, feeding off her anxiety. Days turned into restless nights. Both friends began to feel the weight of malevolence pressing against their chest. Evelyn woke in cold sweats, haunted by visions that twisted reality into nightmares. The oppressive gaze of the Watcher seemed to follow her even in daylight. Milo remained steadfast beside her but could no longer ignore the dread gnawing within his own stomach. The shadows whispered louder now, taunting him with unrelenting suggestions. They sowed seeds of doubt between him and Evelyn, painting images of betrayal and inadequacy. Was he truly helping her, or merely a burden dragging her deeper into darkness? One fateful evening marked a turning point. Their mutual fears erupted into a confrontation neither had anticipated. Under flickering streetlights on their way home from another library visit, filled only with hushed discussions about protective charm suggested by Mrs. Abernathy, something snapped within them both. Evelyn expressed how alone she felt battling those whispers, while Milo defensively insisted she needed to let go of fantasies woven from fabrication. Their words escalated until silence fell heavy around them like an iron curtain dividing their once unshakable bond. Night was marked by restless sleep, as each friend retreated into their own cocoon of insecurities, Evelyn sinking beneath layers of despair, while Milo wrestled with doubts lodged deep within his heart like thorns. It was never rest, nor do the whispering shadows who thrived on discord. They crept deeper into fissures created by rising tensions between friends, a malicious force intent on manipulating thoughts against one another. Dreams plagued by insecurities, meant to unravel what little trust still held them together. They were confronted by manifestations born from each other's fears. Evelyn envisioned abandonment, where love once resided, while Milo grappled with feelings of worthlessness casting long shadows over his self-image. Light finally broke through uncertainty surrounding their fragile friendship. It became clear that only by acknowledging these fears would they stand any chance at weakening the grip the dark folks had over their lives. With newfound determination glimmering behind weary eyes reflecting vulnerability, rather than denial, the two friends stood together, once more facing looming shadows, just beyond reach, waiting patiently for an opportunity to pounce upon. As when least expected, they gathered strength from one another, hands clasped firmly, as if binding hearts despite fractures formed earlier, leading many towards solitude, instead forging onward, seeking unity among chaos, not merely survival but reclamation fought fiercely against every inch, lost unto creeping despair, threatening everything dear, before slipping irrevocably away forevermore, once gone unreturned. Together they confronted the Watcher anew, unleashing powerful light stemming forth from form tightly woven across chasms previously filled only with trepidation, now illuminated, revealing truths long buried beneath layers built high enough, years past forgotten, but never extinguished, so deep embedded yearning for set free, unfurling wings, taking flight above barren landscapes, left desolate, aching, longing, revival rekindled. Yet even as much darkness dissipated, lingering shadows remained, hinting at future encounters still dwelling within. Hidden realms always watching, perhaps waiting, anticipating next moves made uncertain. A watchful eyes observed undeterred, peering closer, yearning drawn forth, insatiably craving connection, rekindled amidst ephemeral realities, melding vividly, dancing gracefully, intertwined creation reborn anew, but fraught perilous walks. Long edges cleaved sharply across precipices, looming overhead, tempting ever onward, beckoning recklessly toward temptation, riskier ventures, taken heedless, unaware, regarding dangers lurking, awaiting unfortunate souls, cast adrift hopelessly. Lost, spiraling onward endlessly, trapped, ensnared, entranced, unwitting followers chasing fleeting moments, carried aloft gently against winds, sweeping serenely yet mercilessly onward toward uncertain horizons framed unmistakably forever. Asking silently, seeking answers often sought nowhere close nearby, as fear gripped both friends. The atmosphere in Evelyn's home thickened with an unsettling sense of doom. Once familiar shadows morphed into figures that seemed to breathe life into their darkest insecurities. Filled the air, weaving through every crevice of her mind and urging her to surrender to doubt. Evelyn sat on her bed, heart pounding as she listened to the silence enveloping her. An absence, rather. It felt like a presence and energy clinging to her thoughts like cobwebs. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, conjuring images of failure and abandonment that gnawed at her spirit. Meanwhile, Milo battled his own demons across town. He paced in his dimly lit room, feeling the weight of inadequacy pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. Each thought spiraled into self-doubt, amplified by whispers echoing from shadows beyond sight. The more he tried to dismiss these feelings as mere figments of imagination, the louder they became, taunting him with reminders of every misstep he had ever taken. A bond between them strained under this pressure, their minds turned against one another, as the whispering shadows began their insidious work. They sowed seeds of distrust, stirring suspicion where camaraderie once thrived. Evelyn found herself questioning Milo's loyalty. Perhaps he truly thought she was losing grip on reality. Milo felt similarly tormented by growing apprehensions about Evelyn's mental state. He'd been wrong all along. Was she really seeing something sinister lurking in corners? Doubts twisted inside him like roots wrapped around stones beneath murky waters, a desperate struggle for clarity amidst confusion deepening around them. On an evening thick with tension, they met again. A silent understanding hung heavily between them as twilight descended outside their small coffee shop refuge. A warm lights flickered above, yet did little to banish encroaching shadows gathering at their feet. Mid sips of lukewarm coffee tinged with bitterness lay unspoken words yearning for acknowledgement. Their friendship teetered over an abyss laden with mistrust born from unseen forces manipulating emotions neither could fully grasp nor comprehend entirely. A crescendo fueled by mounting frustration and dread coiling tighter still around their hearts. Evelyn took a deep breath before addressing those fears head-on. Vulnerability painted across her features illuminated pathways toward potential healing, despite darkness lingering nearby, beckoning quietly, seeking entrance within unguarded souls yearning for solace, yet fearing exposure too keenly still. Together they gathered strength from shared experiences, from laughter echoed through days gone past, woven intricately with threads now fraying but not broken entirely if only tended carefully once more. Determined resolve ignited between them, a beacon shining brightly against tendrils wrapping around hearts, darkening vision, threatening suffocation should trust falter further inside spirals descending rapidly toward despair beyond reach. Tethered tightly fast somewhere lost amidst chaos surrounding them, always lurking, waiting patiently until someone dared venture close enough again towards its embrace, offering both danger alongside discovery. With newfound clarity surrounding them, woven delicately together, their bond forged anew through acceptance rather than denial. Evelyn and Milo stood united against shadows, whispering lies cloaked snugly beneath familiar faces, concealing truths deeper hidden among cornerstones built upon fragility, masked behind walls, unyielding yet ultimately breakable when approached courageously, without restraint, holding dear tightly onto light shining forth, beckoning brighter days ahead. Patiently just beyond horizon, beckoning softly toward fate, intertwined forevermore, entwined eternally throughout realms unseen.